Thank you for staying with us. Justice Obiora Igwatu of the Federal High Court in Abuja has granted bail to 67 minors who participated in the August 2024 protest. The bail was set at 10 million naira each, with the condition that those under 15 years old must provide one surety who is a civil servant. The minors aged 12 to 15 also face a 10-count charge, including alleged treason and conspiracy to commit felony with intent to destabilize Nigeria. Now, this is contrary to Section 96 and punishable under Section 97 of the Penal Code Act. The protest, which took place from August 1 to 10, had many Nigerians on the street expressing their grievances. So joining us for this conversation is a public affairs analyst, Abraham Great. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me on TVC again.
So the Attorney General, right, let's get into the conversation. The Attorney General has asked for the police to submit the case file. And in a video, it said we seem to see a communication problem. The lawyer to the government was saying that some of these boys are married men, so to speak, as he said. I'm hoping you've seen that interview. Just to clear the air on that, what did you see?
You see, there is a saying that when minors are involved, you know, the stake are higher. But not just the stake, but also is our responsibility. We saw the video, and the video that we saw, there is some form of ambiguity between what we saw in the video and what the lawyer actually said. Now, it is very possible that, you know, this has been set up to create, you know, some situation in the courtroom.
Okay.
But what we all can see from the video, we saw that although there are some adults, but there are some children who are being questioned by the young man, I think, very dark man, who was interviewing them at that point. Now, what I can deduce from that was that that was not the cell. That was the courtroom. Get in the first place. But let's just always remember that at any point when minors are involved, the stakes are much higher. And so must be our duty of care, and so must be our responsibility as well. So, but let's go back into the underlying issue. What actually led to this protest? You know, we have the hunger protest or end bad government protest. Until we start addressing the situation that is leading to this protest, we might not be able to find the appropriate approach or the proportionality to addressing them.
So, okay. Aren't we, you know, ignoring a larger issue? Mr. Great, I hope you can hear me. Aren't we ignoring a larger issue of, you know, out-of-school children? I'm sure, to an extent, these children may have been on the street and possibly taken advantage of. In an interview that I've seen with some of them, they could not actually express themselves properly. So in terms of how this, you know, speaks about the nation itself on the increasing rate of out-of-school children and, you know, the security threats that we've seen the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, raise an eyebrow about.
So that would take us back to what we've been hearing, what we've been knowing, even though most of the statistics that we rely on are from foreign agencies like the UN and UNICEF and stuff like that. It is said that, you know, 60% of Nigerians are youth below the age of 25. Now, also, the same statistic is telling us that 40% of Nigerians are living below poverty rate. A much more indicting statistics tells us that the majority, I don't want to quote the particular percentage now, but the majority of those under poverty are living within the region from which some of these young people were arrested from. So the question of leadership in that region has to come to fore in this whole discussion, in this whole public debate. who are the leaders that are leading this region where, I mean, millions of children are out of school, millions of children are malnourished, millions of children are despondent. Now, you've got to look at, when you look at that protest in itself, you realize that a lot of those children are being used as shield. You've got to realize something. We live in a Nigeria where we saw maybe Big Brother or some celebrity shows where even some graduate masters holders cannot even identify the flag of some countries. Do you think some of those children we saw in those videos who were rioting in the north, do you actually think they know that they were carrying Russian flags? We must investigate further who were the adults that were using these children as shield. Who are the adults who are using these children, on the street? And they were shouting, to overtake the government. These are serious, heinous crime. This is treasonable offenses. These are very serious situations. But you've got to realize that these children did not have those thoughts for themselves. Somebody is behind all of those things. And we cannot begin to punish the children without investigating further who got them to the street. So that we must remember that justice is not just about punishment. It is also about proportionality. It's about the proportion. We must be able to go further to realize what proportion of the decision to go on the street can be attributed directly to these children, or who is behind sending them on the street.
Okay, so we're talking about all of this now. There have been questions as to the constitutional age of this minors, who will say, for the police saying that they are adults, to their lawyers saying some of them are married and all of that. First of all, as stated in the Constitution, what is the age for a child to be regarded as an adult and a person to be regarded as a minor?
You see, before we go into the Nigerian Constitution to look at so the age of consent will be the right age that we're looking for if we're looking straight into the Nigerian. And I think if I recall, Nigeria has one of the lowest age of consent, but I think it was amended at some point. Age of consent will be around 16 or something like that, if I'm correct.
Okay.
Now, but if you look at universal global human right law, a child is somebody that is still below the age of 18.
Okay.
Because even if you're going to look at the issue only based on maybe the northern law, the Nigerian law, or what have you, and if some of the law can argue that a minor or can commit crime or can be arrested, there are superimposing laws like the universal human right law that says that an adult, a mature adult, is somebody at the age of 18. Now, we are not saying here that those who have not done wrong, the matter is before the court, so we cannot begin to address or give judgment here. That will be sub judice. But what we are saying here is that as a nation, number one, this government is under fire for the economy, for a lot of things. People are hungry, people are complaining. So the optics matter here. So the people who are at the head of agencies, maybe it's the police, maybe it's the court and what have you, you've got to understand that number two, the optics affect the president. The optics affect the nation, the global image of the nation in the first place. So when you see Amnesty International, you see UNIFES, some of these people weighing in on this matter, they might not immediately want to go into investigation. They just see headlines in some of the cases and they jump on them. So we've got to look at the people that we appoint as ministers, people that we appoint as head of agencies. Some of their irrational decisions is affecting the nation, is causing agitation. How do you just publicly look, for example, what is the ratio disadvantage of giving a bail of 10 million naira
to 67
to people who are malnourished? Huh?
10 million naira bail.
Let's assume that they are not minors. Let's go by the feeling that they are not minors. People who are complaining of hunger, people that we can see in picture, vivid picture, that they are malnourished. What is the ratio descendant in determining that a 10 million bail? Is it that we see that they are liquid? Is it that we see that they have assets? Is it that there is a job they are doing? Is it that they have passport and visa that they can run away? What exactly is the rationale beyond that bail? It is unthinkable. Who makes that kind of a decision?
So now that the chief...
I could be wrong.
Now that the chief CJN has called for the case file to be transferred to her office, what do you think might be done? Do you think there will be a reversal of this and the boys released?
Oh, definitely. Because we can't be throwing... What we have just done is throwing the book at them. We cannot be using a sledgehammer, to crack a nut. As a nation, we've got to be a lot more careful. So I would, like I said, I cannot give the determination of what the law should decide. Like I said, that would be just sub judice. But I'm talking right now in terms of humanity. Empathy must be in place. And number two, government and those who represent government in different agencies must be careful of their optics.
Right. So this is one issue that has, gathered a lot of reaction both within and outside the country, even from journalists having it on the front pages of their newspapers outside the country. Talk to us about the potential, implication of this kind of issue, considering the fact that Nigeria is a party to some treaties on ensuring the protection of fundamental human rights and also the protection of children and also child rights.
There's a saying that a society is judged largely by how its treatment of its most vulnerable. The way Nigeria is seen, you've got to ask yourself, what is the value of the life of an average Nigerian? We demand treatment from international organizations, but until we start treating ourselves better, the world will not treat us a lot better. A lot more value needed to be placed on a single Nigerian. We lived in some countries that some of us have been privileged to live in some countries. We've traveled, I've traveled to almost every part of this world. In some part of the world, a cat, just the fact that maybe you just do like this to a cat, somebody can, call the police and say that you are being mean to their cat, just that you did the work to a cat. The fact that you threw something at a dog in some countries in Europe, you can go to jail. But a Nigerian, a person in authority can slap somebody publicly. In Nigeria, somebody can use their power to oppress another person. These are the things that affect our passport mobility in the first place. When you talk about passport mobility, how many countries we can enter, we're not even mindful of what are the optics that affect some of these people. It is the perception, your corruption, your ease of doing business, the way you treat your citizen. You cannot have 40% of your citizen under poverty and you think more nations are going to open their doors because they will be seeing them as economic immigrants. These are the things. You look at Ukraine. When Ukraine was trying to join the EU, for so long they've been trying. But because Ukraine was nearly similar to Nigeria. I'm shocked sometimes when I travel to Ukraine in those days, and you will see police there are places in Ukraine where they are still using what in Yoruba, what we call shalanga. You know what shalanga is? I went to preach in a place in Ukraine, and the toilet available for the church of about 500 people is all in the center. You go on the street and you still see police collecting the bribe. So all of those things, the EU had to give them condition that you have to go and address some of this issue first before you can come back. And when they were able to address some of those issues, I think it was in 2017, they are not yet in NATO. They are not full member of EU. Do you know what? They gave them access to travel to a lot more countries in Europe. The way you treat your citizen, the way you run your agencies determines how international organization will respect you and imbibe you. Why is it that a Nigerian passport is more powerful than a Botswana passport or a South African passport? South African has been run a lot by white people who have put in place some measures, some organization, some treatment. Yeah, they're not a perfect nation, yet, but why are we treating ourselves this way? Are we this poor in humanity that we cannot see more value in each other? We need to do better.
Right, we need to do better. But some have also said that irrespective of the situation, whether they were, taken advantage of by some unknown persons, they are actually, liable in that sense for having to fly the Russian flags and some of the statements that they made. But doesn't this raise concern about the state of our juvenile facilities, our Borstal centers? Because in the first place, why will minors be sent to a major prison?
So that is on the, we have to ask this question actually directly to the Minister of Interior. I don't know the specific prison that these children are sent for, but we have to be careful again on how we carry out justice. In a country where the bulk of its public leaders live with much impunity, we cannot then become so punitive on the citizens. When somebody steals a goat, we send them to 2 years in prison. I've heard of cases where somebody just stole, maybe chicken or goat, and they're somewhere in Kirikiri for 3 years. Nobody's coming for their bail because nobody can afford them. But then you see leaders who have stolen billions, who have even the federal government police still protecting them in the same country. No, we can do better than that. We need to, I'll go back to optics and empathy. It is not everything that we'll be sending people to prison for. Some of the situation, to be able to help the optics, some of those children immediately that they were apprehended needed to have been reoriented, reintroduced. Some of them, it is an opportunity to find out where they come from, what local government, and ask the local government chairman, ask the governor questions. Why are these children on the street?
All right.
What programs can be put in place? Well,
it takes a lot more effort, especially
I'm just going to say,
when what you've mentioned about these children. But this case cannot be exhausted. They have been granted bail, and we are hoping that they will be able to, meet the conditions of this bill, which is just one issue. We still have to address some of the underlying concerns that led to the protest in the first place. But that is a fine place to, end the conversation for this morning. Public Affairs Analyst Abraham Great, thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me again. It is working.
You're welcome. Right, we went to the street to ask this question. Would you quit your